Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to International Podcast Day. It's wonderful to be here. My name's Craig, and I'm here with Pilar.
Hola, bienvenidos a todos. Esto va a ser un show bilingüe. Hello, my name is Pilar, and I'll be here with Craig, and we're going to swap languages. We'll see how it goes. Please bear with us.
So it's going to be a bilingual session, similar to our podcast, which we'll speak about in a minute, but maybe a short introduction to let you know who we are if you've never seen us before. So my name's Craig. I'm originally from the UK, but I live in Valencia, Spain. I teach English here at the British Council. I also have an online business teaching English to Spanish speakers. And I have a podcast at inglespodcast.com. And I have a wonderful podcast with Pilar. Is it that way? On Fire Talk? Yes.
Online, yes.
Called Clave, the podcast.
Yeah. Hey, and I'm Pilar Orti, and I am based in London, actually. And I have two podcasts, 21st Century Work Life and Management Cafe. But today I'm here with Craig to talk about Enclave, the podcast. Veo que están Isaac y Jorge. Quiero deciros hola. Luego también está Christopher, who I haven't met. Hello. Hola, Jorge. Y en algún momento, primero vamos a contar un poco lo que hemos descubierto, lo haremos en los dos idiomas y luego empezaremos a traer a los podcasters. Bien, Isaac, dice bien. Gracias. Ray, good day from Australia. Oh my God.
Good day, mate.
Good day. Craig, do you want to start talking about why and when and how?
Why we started it? Well, I've got you to thank for that, Pilar. Pilar got in touch with me. We know each other from the UK podcasters group started by Mike and Isabella Russell and New Media Europe. We actually met at New Media Europe this year. And then Pilar suggested that we start a bilingual podcast and explore what's happening in Spain in the podcasting area. The Spanish connection is very strong for both of us. I'm originally from the UK, but I live in Spain. Pilar's originally from Madrid in Spain, but now lives in the UK. So we've got that crossover. And although we love podcasts, both producing them and listening to them, we really didn't listen to any podcasts in Spanish before, did we? It was mainly English-speaking podcasts that we listened to. So Pilar suggested that we start listening to Spanish podcasters, interview them, find out what's happening in Spain with podcasting, and then compare what we learn from these podcasters with our knowledge of podcasting overseas in the US and the UK and Europe. So that's basically the idea behind the podcast, which has been running now for 3 months, Pilar, I think.
8 episodes.
8 episodes.
Talking podcast language, 8 episodios llevamos. El octavo sale, sí. Y entrevistamos a Isaac el lunes para creo que el 9º.
So it's quite young, es relativamente joven. Pilar, ¿quieres resumir un poquito lo que he dicho en inglés?
Sí, pues lo que ha dicho Craig es que empezamos el podcast porque los dos conocemos muchos podcasts ingleses, norteamericanos, pero no estábamos escuchando a ningún podcast en español. Tampoco teníamos mucha idea de qué estaba ocurriendo. Hay muchos, hay pocos, de qué podcastea la gente. Y esa fue la razón de empezar el podcast. Hello to all these people, Mashashi from Japan and Ray from Australia. It's just so exciting.
It's amazing. It's like microphones across the world, hands across the Atlantic, microphones across the world. It's an unbelievable idea that it's the third one that Dave and Steve have put together, I think. And it's amazing. I've been looking forward to this for ages. So let's start. Let's say briefly what we've learned, and then we can see a couple of friends already in the chat room that we've interviewed. So maybe we can bring them in on points that are more relevant to them. So
can I quickly say, sorry, Craig. Craig McIntosh says, where can we join the community Greg mentioned? I don't know if that's relevant to something earlier, but I just wanted in case anyone can answer that. Good. There you're coming. Okay, sorry, Craig. Carry on.
Okay. So, well, the first thing that I learned personally, I had no idea. Before that, we want to say a huge thank you to the Spanish-speaking podcast community. We have been so well received. Muchísimas gracias a todos. We've been received so well and so warmly by everybody we've reached out to. Everybody that we've contacted has been incredibly kind and accommodating and very, very enthusiastic to come on the show, to speak to us, to educate us, basically, and introduce us to Spanish podcasting. So that's the first thing I want to say. Thank you to everybody who has been helpful to us. And thank you for being so warm and so lovely.
Gracias, podcasters. Nos hemos sentido completamente acogidos, bien recibidos y no nos lo esperábamos. Así que muchas gracias. Go for it.
Sounds so short in Spanish, and I'm going on for ages.
I'm just going very quickly.
So what have we learned? Well, one thing that I'd heard of something called iVoox, but I wasn't quite sure what it was. I knew it was some kind of podcasting directory. And what I'll try and do is put a link in the chat room to it. Here it is. I see it basically as a Spanish iTunes. It's huge over here. It's a podcast directory you can host with iVoox. A lot of Spanish national radio stations have their podcasts in iVoox as well, and it's quite similar to iTunes in the way that it works on a rating system. So you can comment on podcasts, you can build your own podcast playlist. There's an Android app, there's an iPhone app. And of course, immediately I made sure that our podcasts were in there because it's really important for podcasters to be in the iVoox directory.
Not just that, it's one of the first tweets we got is where's your iVoox listing? So we said, okay, we have to be in there as one of the first tweets. Sí, una de las primeras cosas que nos ha sorprendido ha sido iVoox, que no lo conocíamos. O bueno, sí que habíamos oído algo, pero no, y que todo el mundo está ahí. Es una mezcla entre Libsyn, donde puedes poner el podcast, pero también donde la gente lo escucha, donde puedes también, you can have an account, a premium account in iVoox. Es una de las primeras cosas que nos ha chocado.
And according to El País, which is a pretty popular newspaper in Spain, national newspaper, there are over 4 million users in iVoox and over 5,000 hours of audio. So it's a huge platform for podcasters here. Another one we learned about is called podcast.com, which was founded by Fran Gonzalez at Madrileño in Twitter. And it reminded me a little bit of Podcast Alley, but a more modern version. So again, another podcast directory that's well used over here. And you learn about these things when you talk to Spanish podcasters and you see what they're doing with their podcast and where they're searching for podcasts. Otherwise, you just wouldn't know. Every country, it seems, would have its specific directories and go-to platforms for podcasting.
Mm-hmm. Sí, la otra plataforma que no conocíamos es podcast.com de Madrillano. I think that's a good summary, Craig.
We found it quite difficult to find numbers and statistics on podcast downloads in Spain. I mean, that might be me and my bad Google search skills, but I haven't really been able to find concrete, trustable statistics on podcasting stats to give here. There are many articles about podcasting in the Spanish press, some very good, some not so good, but not readily available stats. So that's something that I'll be chasing up and trying to find better, reliable statistics so that I can compare them with US statistics.
Isaac y Jorge, si estáis todavía por ahí escuchando, una cosa que Craig no ha podido hacer es encontrar estadísticas, números de descargas. No sabemos muy bien dónde buscar, solamente para compararlo. Así que si tenéis alguna idea o algo, o nos lo ponéis en el chat o nos mandáis un tweet o un email en algún momento. Mm-hmm. So I've just asked Isaac Baltanás and Jorge Marín Nieto, who are in the chat, I've just asked them to tell us if they know where we can find these stats.
We found a really wide variety of podcasters and subjects that people are podcasting about in Spain. Internet marketers, podcast network creators, podcasting about TV series, about comics, gaming, tech, mobile phones. There are podcast coaches, very similar to the coaches in the US, teaching podcasting. very niche podcasters. We've interviewed one or two, Enrique Lario, David Gamez, podcasting about very niche subjects, which was very impressive to me.
And someone, and I'll say this in both languages, someone I would have loved to interview is this lady who was pregnant, and she podcasted throughout her pregnancy. But I realized that by the time we would be able to get her on, it was like her due date, so we didn't. Estábamos comentando todos los temas sobre los que podcastean los podcasters en España de todo tipo. Nos hemos encontrado sobre series, técnicos, sobre podcasting, de todo, fotografía. Y estaba diciendo que me habría encantado entrevistar o hablar con, creo que era el bombo de Carlava o algo así era, pero se le acababa el embarazo. Esta chica está embarazada y estaba podcasteando durante todo su embarazo, pero ya no me iba a dar tiempo.
Jorge's saying, just one thing, Jorge's saying that obviously with Spreaker, that's a very popular platform for Spanish podcasters, have very good and reliable statistics, and so do iVoox. So yeah, you can get statistics of downloads from those two platforms.
Yeah, and Isaac makes the point also that which we have. I think this is quite general until somebody comes up with a better system. Is that when you're looking at downloads, you don't know whether someone's listened to the thing, whether they pressed play by mistake. I think we're still to solve this one. And he says that there's a service that is going to be launched soon, which looks promising, called Shorogu. So another option. And then Jorge talks about stuff that you can do by filtering your feed with FeedPress. Yes, and Danielle says smiley face. Hello. Excellent.
Hi, Danielle. What else? So one thing that really impressed me was the informal vibe that exists among Spanish podcasters. When podcasters are podcasting in the same area, they make a point of getting together, breaking bread and having food and eating together either before or after the podcasts. There are many meetups around the country promoting podcasts getting together over a beer. So maybe international listeners would appreciate the stereotype, if you like, of the warm, gregarious Spanish people eating outside in the street and being really, really sociable. That vibe really, that's how I saw Spanish podcasters, as being very open, very friendly, very ready to get together physically, not only virtually, to do their podcasting and to meet as friends once they've made contact with each other.
Nos ha encantado el aspecto informal de todo esto y el hecho de que realmente parece que la gente está disfrutando de juntarse o detrás del micro y por Skype o cuando pueden juntos. El otro día hablábamos con los chicos de Porque Podcast y nos contaban que habían metido un pollo en el horno. Eso siempre se me va a quedar con Periscope. ¿Ves? Jorge dice, yeah, y cocinar a la vez que grabamos. Yeah, Jorge is saying on the note of food and getting together, Jorge in the chat from Porque Podcast, which is a podcast just that he created with some friends because he wanted to podcast and chat. So, but he's saying that, cooking at the same time as we're recording. And they did do that once with a Periscope. As they were recording, they took a break, went to put the chicken in the oven, and they took the Periscope.
Put the Periscope into the chicken, into the oven. Into the kitchen or into the chicken? I don't know, but both will be interesting.
El Periscope fue en el pollo o en el horno, Jorge? Okay, sorry. Go for it. Great.
We'll bring Jorge in a second, because we were lucky to have Jorge on Clave, the podcast recently, who is really typical of this idea of community around podcasting in Spain. A podcast with 7 permanent podcasters inviting guests on whenever they podcast. So obviously the logistics of making that a successful podcast will be quite complicated, and they've now joined a podcast network that we'll speak about in a minute. So it's a podcast that's enjoying a lot of success as well at the moment. Before we leave the idea of a podcasting community, eating together and socializing, etc., Jotapod Malaga this year, that's a Spanish podcasting conference that's the biggest in the country. It's kind of like an NMX or a podcast movement, Spanish style, obviously on a smaller scale, but on a national level, very, very popular and very, very famous. It's a 6-day event. It's coming up soon, from the 10th to the 16th of October. And maybe this is, what do you think, Pilar? We can bring in maybe Isaac to speak about that, because I'm sure Isaac's been to Jotapod. Would you like to come in, Isaac, and tell us about it?
Isaac.
Because it is a big thing here. It is a big thing in Spanish podcasting, Jotapod.
Sí, Isaac, ¿te apetece unirte? Ah, muy bien. Thank you, Dave.
Just put a link in the chat room.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. We're bringing in Isaac.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenas.
Hola, muy buenas. ¿Cómo estás?
¿Cómo
It's
estáis?
a pre-interview, because we're going to interview you next week.
Yeah.
So it's great that we had this chance to meet before we record.
Ya, para entrar en calor un poquito, ¿no?
Sí.
Exactamente, calentarnos un poquito. Bueno, Isaac, ¿puedes contarnos un poquito sobre Jotapod?
Sí, ante todo, muchas gracias.
¿Qué pasa ahí?
invitarme, gracias.
¿Hola?
¿Sí?
Dale, Isaac.
Hablar sobre las JPod, decís.
Por favor. Bueno, primero, algunas palabras sobre ti, para que la gente que no conocen.
Bien, pues nada, en principio, bueno, yo soy Isaac Baltanás, tengo un podcast que se llama Podcast Pro, es un metapodcast que habla precisamente de todo esto, de cómo hacer los podcasts, etcétera. Y además también estoy en la organización de las JPod 2016, que se celebrarán en Málaga del 10 al 16 de octubre. Y bueno, lo interesante de las JPod de este año es que son las más largas de la historia. Recordemos que las JPod en España llevan ya 11 ediciones, llevamos 11 años celebrándolas. Y bueno, cada vez han sido crecientes, cada vez han sido mejores, cada vez más ponentes, más contenidos. Bueno, en esta vez parece que vamos a batir todos los récords de la historia en España. Y vamos a hacer grandes cosas. Vamos a tener a muchos ponentes, vamos a tener talleres y vamos a tener un curso de podcasting completo desde el lunes hasta el jueves, con conferencias, ponentes y más talleres aún. O sea, una pasada, completamente distinto a lo que hemos visto hasta ahora. Y la verdad es que estamos muy contentos, muy orgullosos. Vamos a hacer historia, al menos en las JPod, que esto es lo importante.
One second, Isaac. Just let me translate that for the English listeners. Sure. So Isaac is what the Spanish called a meta podcaster. So he podcasts about everything podcasting. I've put his website in the chat room, and he's very well known in the Spanish community of podcasters. And Isaac says about Jotapod, this conference in Malaga, that it's making history because it's the longest Jotapod or J-Pod that there's ever been. It's 6 days long. They're going to have courses to learn about podcasting from Monday to Thursday. Is that right? And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
It's the weekend podcast, bro.
It's a party.
Yeah.
It's the party and guest speakers as well. So it's like a concentrated conference, I think, on the weekend, right?
Ya, la cuestión es esa. Primero tenemos unas JPod lectivas con un curso y después el weekend, el fin de semana, con toda la fiesta, ¿no? The party with all friends. Bueno, pues es un poco lo que estamos haciendo y estamos muy ilusionados. Faltan solo 2 semanas. Hicimos una maratón de podcasting también para recoger fondos. Cada vez tenemos más ilusión, más entusiasmo y creemos que ya está casi todos. Estamos a puntito. Muy contentos de tener las JPod aquí cerca ya.
Can I pick up on that? Something that I saw that I really liked that Isaac was just referring to was they had this marathon on Sunday. So basically a lot of the guys, Sune, if you're listening, we have a lot to thank to Sune for this thing. Craig and I, we're like, Sune. So Sune and friends and Josh Green, who we've also started to meet, they did this marathon to raise funds for the Jotapod. And I think this was great because it's another, the whole community coming together. I love that they were giving away stuff like courses, books from podcasters. And I just thought it was a lovely way of getting ready for this and raise funds for something that a lot of people are giving their time and resources for free, I imagine. So, muy buena idea. Me encantó lo del maratón.
Fue una de las iniciativas y bueno, ahora ya tenemos todo a punto prácticamente. Ya en la página web podemos ver efectivamente todos los ponentes, todos los cursos, todos los talleres, todos los directos. Es importante, tenemos podcast en directo. Esto es importante, les gusta mucho a los podcasters, especialmente a los podcasters y oyentes españoles. Así que es otro de los puntos importantes.
And Isaac's saying that they do a lot of live podcasting from the conference. It's a very, very big part of the conference for podcasters to broadcast live and podcast live from the event. And there was another thing that we needed. Yes, another thing that's very interesting in comparison with podcasting outside of Spain is that a lot of listeners go to podcast conferences and meetups to meet the podcasters. They're kind of like they're regular listeners, they're fans of the podcast, and they like to go to meet face-to-face podcasters that they've been listening to for a long time.
Sí, esa es la idea, encontrarse cara a cara, volver, bueno, por fin poder desvirtualizar, ¿no? Sería la palabra en español, el poder por fin conocer en persona a los podcasters favoritos, a los que has estado siguiendo y de los que has descubierto el contenido que tanto te gusta. Esa es la idea.
And can I add, because something I found that was really funny was this listener that they have who's very active in the Twitter community and in the podcast community called @podtaxi. And it's this taxi driver who plays podcasts in his taxi. And that I haven't heard of that. I know of a cab driver that has a podcast here, but I just love this, how the listeners, they even have their own asociación. ¿Cómo se llama la asociación de los oyentes, Isaac? I mean, the day that we have, I don't know, I don't really feel like starting one, but we don't have that in the Anglo-Saxon world. Yeah.
Spot. This is the name.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Sorry, one question, Isaac. While you're on with us, and I think this question will be appropriate for you. Do you see in Spanish podcasting that there is a group of podcasters who are making a living, que están ganando la vida, in teaching podcasting to podcasters who want to start podcasting, and also maybe podcasting for companies? In other words, están creando podcasts por empresas. ¿Hay podcasters que están ganando la vida haciendo eso?
Es muy incipiente, hay pocos, pero sí tengo noticias de podcasters que realmente se ganan la vida, literalmente, se ganan un sueldo con su podcast. Insisto, son muy pocos y los modelos de negocio son también muy clásicos. Por un lado está el crowdfunding. Hablamos, por ejemplo, de Fernando Berlín. No es exactamente un podcast porque también hace un live y después se queda encapsulado como podcast, pero sí que es cierto que se gana la vida con eso perfectamente. Y luego está, por ejemplo, también Alex Salgado, que puede ser otro de los podcasters que va por las mañanas, hace su podcast y se vuelve a casa y tiene un sueldo. Depende de una empresa mayor, pero igualmente se están ganando la vida. Pocos, pero lo están haciendo. Y, bueno, y en mi caso con la formación, por ejemplo.
Muy bien. Entonces es algo que está creciendo. Entonces supongo que en 5 años va a crecer aún más. It will grow in the future. More people will be able to earn money from podcasting as a career.
Considero que hay 3 backgrounds que debe tener un podcaster. Y yo creo que hasta que no entendamos esto, no crecerá. El número 1 es el background de... si quieres, de radio, de sonidista, de una persona que entienda cómo funciona el sonido. No hace falta estudiarlo, es cuestión de práctica. 2, el background de vendedor. Es una cosa que en España nos cuesta. Mira que en Reino Unido, Estados Unidos, la venta, el marketing es más sencillo, ¿no? Es más natural. Y en España no tanto. Y 3, el background de emprendedor, que es la otra fundamental. El decir, bueno, es que me tengo que montar mi propia empresa y tengo que salir adelante y el podcast es mi buque insignia. Hasta que no entendamos estas 3 partes, en España todavía va a costar un poquito.
Vale, ya está claro, muy bien. Pues esperamos que sí.
Sí, seguro. Seguro. Siempre salimos
muy
adelante.
Bien.
Eso está claro.
Muy bien. Pues muchas gracias, Isaac. Vamos a ver si Enrique le funciona. Pero qué bien, que te veremos el lunes y te escucharemos para la grabación.
Sin duda. Estaremos ahí. Nada, estaremos ahí y ampliaremos esta información. Dime, Pilar.
¿Tu podcast y tu web para los que estén escuchando?
Sí, es podcastpro.audio. Lo dejo también en el chat para quien quiera aprender un poquito sobre podcast. Quizá le pueda servir, le pueda ser útil.
Muy bien.
Thank you
Muchísimas gracias, Isaac.
For joining
us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Before we move on, can I say hello to Juan Carlos Giraldo, who I've never met, so I'm really glad he's here. Hello, Juan Carlos. And we're going to try to get Enrique on.
Enrique Alario. Enrique.
Dave, we're trying to get Enrique Alario on. I love this. It's like, Dave, can you do the magic, please? And let our guests come online.
It's like Blab revisited, but better. It works.
It's like Blab with like someone who can make it work. You don't have to worry about it.
And Dave's doing a great job behind the curtain there, putting the strings and bringing people in. Thank you, Dave.
Enrique. Sí. Yes, we can hear you. I think...
Are you there, Enrique?
No te vemos. Sí, te escuchamos.
I can't hear him.
Yo sí. I can hear him, Craig. I don't know what's going on, but da igual, no te preocupes. Hola, Enrique.
I think we may...
Carry on, Craig.
No, I'm saying we may have to bring Enrique out because I have no audio. I don't know if there's any audio in... Is it just
Enrique,
me?
¿lo intentas otra vez? Vale. Okay, we're going to let Enrique go. Dave, can you let Enrique go? He's having some trouble. We're having some trouble with him, but we'll let him on in like 3 minutes. We'll try again. Yeah, Craig?
Yeah, let's try again. What else do we... Oh, another thing that's very popular in Spanish podcasting, the idea of raffles and draws, los sorteos, that a lot of podcasts do with their listeners to create interest, to grow the community, to grow engagement. I don't see that so much in the English podcasting world. I'm not sure if it's a legal thing, if legally people are allowed to offer prizes for competitions. Maybe in the US there's a problem with that, but it's quite popular here. Have you noticed that, Pilar?
Yes, I have. I don't think it's a legal thing. I think it's got to do again with what we're podcasting for and the relationship with the listeners. So it sounds like the listeners, like we said, they have their own association for podcast listeners. They attend also the conferences, and I think it's just a tighter relationship with the audience. Estamos diciendo que nos ha sorprendido los concursos y las rifas y cosas que hay a veces en los podcasts. Y Craig se estaba preguntando por qué no lo vemos en el mundo anglosajón, si había algo que tuviera que ver con la ley o algo así. Y yo le estaba diciendo que creo que es parte de cómo se relaciona el podcaster con el oyente, que es una relación más estrecha en España. Juan Carlos says he hasn't heard about that. I don't think it's illegal or anything. I think it's just... Maybe you can start doing it, and then maybe.
I just remember listening to Leo Laporte on Twit, and whenever he did any kind of photography competition or anything, he made a point of saying that it's not an actual prize draw, that it's for fun, that there's no money involved. That he always made a legal disclaimer whenever he had an informal competition running. So it just made me think maybe in the US they have to be very careful in some states. I'm not sure. But it's really popular in Spain. We noticed a lot of podcasters are giving prizes, especially on Sunet's network, Nación Podcaster. They're doing a lot of raffles, and we should talk a little about networks because there are quite a few very strong and very good Spanish networks at the moment.
Okay, let's just pause a moment because and maybe it's a good... Let's try and bring Enrique Alario in again because he has a comment. Dave, if we could bring Enrique. He's got a comment saying that there are some legal things to bear in mind. Hay matices legales. And Ray is saying that in Australia we have rules around chance draw. So I was completely wrong. There might be some reasons. Enrique, hola. Craig, oyes Enrique?
Ahora te oigo. Sí, I can hear you now. Perfect.
No se te ve, pero se te oye muy bien.
We can hear you perfectly. So we wanted to bring you on, Enrique, because you're a niche podcaster. And we mentioned at the beginning that we've met some wonderful niche podcasters that are podcasting about something very specific. So maybe if you could introduce yourself and say what your podcast is about and where people can find it.
Both.
Oh, what a shame. His audio's gone. I think maybe it's a bandwidth.
Yeah.
Has it gone for you as well?
Oh man. Yeah, he has. Yeah. Oh, what a shame. Okay.
Well,
right.
I'm sorry, Enrique, it's not working. As you say, it is podcasting. These things happen.
Yeah.
But I will put Enrique's website in the chat.
You do that, Juan Carlos. Would you like to come on camera? I don't know where you are, or he says, of course. So maybe, shall we do that, Craig? Dave, can we bring Juan Carlos Giraldo on, please, when you can? Thank you for this. This is so cool. Enrique, see if you can stay in the chat. It'll be really nice. Enrique's got a podcast called On Site, where he talks about stuff related to the construction business. And he's the episode. He was our second guest, so episode 2, I think it was. Do check him out. He's really, really interesting stuff. Why he started podcasting from blogging. It's an area that you wouldn't expect a podcaster to be in. So really nice. Yeah. He might be later here because he sorted out his video. But meanwhile, perdona, Juan Carlos. Hola.
I am here. Hi there. I am from Boston. I live in Boston, Massachusetts.
Wow.
Red Sox fan.
What time is it in Boston?
We are right now, let's see, 8:30.
Okay. Well, good morning.
But I wake up very early, though, because it's an International Podcast Day. Happy Podcast Day, everyone.
Happy Podcast Day to you.
Yay. What's going on, guys?
What is your podcast? And,
well, my podcast is, the name of my podcast is Podcast and Business. So what I do is I do interviews to entrepreneurs. I do solos as well. My focus is in best practices, ethical, support a small business as well. I just started here in Boston with the sponsorships, the small business, like mentioned during my podcast. So I am very happy with. I have 3 seasons. I am in the episode number 70. So excited. And here, you know what? We start here. I don't know if you hear about PRX Podcast Garage. Podcast Garage is a non-profit that they have studios here to rent when we have interviews. So, when I have a guest, I invite them. In person, I invite them there, and it's a lot of fun. It's very affordable. I am so happy with, But my podcast, most of my podcasts are in Spanish. So.
And do you listen to podcasts in English or in Spanish or both?
Do you know what? In English. but I have some in Spanish. My favorite podcast is Rico Dico with Cara Swisher, and she's fantastic. And another podcast is Saul Kaplan, is the owner of a business innovation factory here in Rhode Island, and it's fantastic in about digital transformation, a new business model, and other things. And Brian Solis is hosted right now one in BMC software, that is fantastic as well. He's great, But in Spanish, I have very good in Spanish. That is my friend Republica Web. It's one guy. The name is he running, like a small projects, a website and something like that. And he do a lot of newsjacking as well. So I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
and Juan Carlos, did you start your podcast? There's feedback.
Tell me.
Did you start your podcast as an aid to your business or as a hobby? Did it then become something that promoted your business?
You know what? Interesting question. I used to write a lot of blogs, through my podcast, but through my webpage, jcgiraldo.com. But what happened? I feel tired to write, and everything is the same, and then, you know what? I have to change all my context, all my concept. And then I start to do my podcast almost 1.5 years ago. But my goal is go to get a sponsorship for a small business. Just start with one here in Newton, Massachusetts, and then sponsor in every episode. We start to find the contract. But yeah, my goal is business. Is the point. Yeah, I like that, and I don't really like it. It's completely different. The podcaster communities are more friendly than they are no podcasters. They are very welcoming, like yourself, guys, and yeah, that's it.
Wonderful.
It's nice.
Well,
Yeah.
it's really
Did
nice
you
to
say you
meet
have
you.
podcasts in Spanish, Juan Carlos? Did you say you have podcasts in Spanish?
Yeah, all my podcasts are in Spanish, all of them.
Ah, okay.
You know,
Okay. Excellent.
I have many. You know what? All my calendar is full until 2000. Until December, because I have all my guests there, and sometimes I record before. You know, I don't like procrastination, so.
Yeah. Not like us recording like this Wednesday for Sunday.
I think we can learn from you.
You know what? It's very important. It's my experience, and all podcasters and all beginners, I will say that, for example, if you want to start something, start very professional, which means buy your equipment, buy your web page, special for podcasts. For there are a company in Florida that I bought the design, everything. Like for example, I use lip sync. Everything has to be in professional way, not like MP3 free here. Blah, blah. No, has to be professional if you're looking for become a real professional guy in the business of podcast, of course.
Yeah,
okay. I don't know.
That's very good advice.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's it.
Excellent.
This is who I am, and
Muy bien, Juan Carlos.
I have to go. My web page is podcastandbusiness.com, and yeah, easy.
Okay, thank you. If you wouldn't mind, Chris was asking if you could put a link to your website
I will right now
in the chat room. And it was really nice to meet you.
You were recommending.
Nice to meet you. Hope you get my English, my friend.
better than mine.
Hey, good to see you. Have a good day.
Lovely to meet you. Bye-bye. Adios.
Hasta luego, Juan Carlos.
Gracias. Ciao.
Thanks, Dave. Juan Carlos is leaving us. We're going to do one last try with Enrique. And Enrique, you're going to... Enrique, are you ready? Yes, he is. Dave, we're going to have our last try with Enrique to see whether his video is
Third time lucky.
working.
Come on, Enrique, you can do this. You can do this.
If anyone else, yes, Ray, that's what we're hoping. If anyone else wants to join us, just let us know in the...
Chris,
especially if you're a Spanish.
I wanted Chris to come in because Chris is a friend of mine from Valencia who's podcasting in the Spanish market. So I'd like to get his view on Spanish podcasting. If you want to come in, Chris, if you'd like to come in, love to have you to say hello.
So Enrique is loading. Do you want to carry on, Craig?
Well, yeah, I'd like to mention podcast networks because there are a few in Spain. There are some excellent networks that are bringing podcasters together, quality podcasters under the same umbrella. And there are lots of comparisons with networks outside of Spain. So that's something we could mention.
I noticed that there were... No, it's not connecting, Enrique. Oh, what a shame, man. What a shame.
Can we bring Chris in?
Yes, you bring Chris in. You liaise with Dave while I carry on talking about the podcast networks. So, yeah, something we've noticed is that the podcasters are creating networks and they're bringing in other podcasts. And whereas, of course, networks do exist in the English-speaking community, we really feel like it's coming from a real personal approach. Again, so Sune, who actually is the person that introduced us to the community last year when we had a podcast day event that we organized with him, he's got Nación Podcaster. That's the name of the network, because he's also got Nación Podcast, which is the podcast, and it might be the other way around. So he's got that one. Madrillano has one, of course. Emil Carr, who's a top podcasting guy there, also has one. So we found this is really, I don't know, we're really interesting that they're creating podcasts and all coming together under one umbrella. And we talked to the guys from Porque Podcast about this, and also Sune. So we can release Enrique, because he's not going to be able to join us.
I'm putting these links of these networks in the chat room so that people have a reference to what we're speaking about. So Sune's Nación Podcast, Emilio Cano is a very successful podcast network, Emilcar.fm in the Spanish language. There's Podstar.fm, and there's Podium Podcast, which you said, Pilar, has a podcast that's been very, very successful in a similar way to Serial.
Yeah, I think, and please correct me in the chat, me corregís en el chat, el podcast de Podium que ha tenido mucho éxito se llama El Apagón. So that's the one from them. The other thing I was going to say, El Gran Apagón, Jorge, gracias. El Gran Apagón. So yes, that one is it's very similar to Serial in that it tells a story and it's got high production values, etc. I was just going to say something and I forgot. Juan Carlos says, will you save this conversation? I can't, but Podcast Day said the video will be released next week. So it will be around.
If there's any masochist who wants to listen to it twice.
I think probably the links are good. So Dave, Podcast Day, we still have Enrique as trying to join us, which he's not, and we'd like to let Chris.
If we can bring Chris in, Dave, that would be fantastic. He's originally from the UK, a podcaster who's also a teacher, but he's podcasting for Spanish speakers, teaching English.
We're saying that Christopher Gallop is in.
We can't see him.
Oh, Enrique is in. This is really weird. I think we need to kick out the guest because something's going on with Fire Talk. Hey, you're really pushing Fire Talk to the max. Okay, what happens when someone comes in, then the other one tries to hop in also?
I can hear the gears creaking under the weight of this session.
Really weird. Carry on, Craig. Yeah.
No, we were speaking about the idea that
networks.
I think, networks. And I think when you mentioned Serial, I think like Spanish podcasting seems to be on the cusp, on the tip of the wave at the moment. There hasn't been a really big injection of money in Spanish podcasting that we've seen in the US. Advertisers aren't jumping on board in the same way that they are in the US. So European podcasting and Spanish podcasting in particular is still a little bit behind the US. But I think that's going to change very soon. I think in a couple of years, we're going to see a huge expanse of Spanish podcasting and money coming into it.
Shall we see whether we can bring Sune in? Sune, estamos teniendo problemas porque Enrique intenta entrar, no ha podido, y luego nos están diciendo que hay otra persona. Dave, can we try to bring Sune in? We're really pushing you today, Dave. I know it's 5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock in the morning for these guys, and we're like, can you bring our friends in? There's something going on with Enrique. Enrique, te voy a pedir que cierres tu aplicación y la vuelvas a abrir, porque a lo mejor está algo ahí.
O cierres tu navegador, a lo mejor.
Por si es, sí. We're asking Enrique to close his app because he's the one that we're being told is trying to join us. So,
in the meantime, we've discovered that Twitter is a really, really hot medium of communication between podcasters. You noticed that, Pilar, that Twitter. Everybody's coming together and communicating.
I'm wondering if I hop off, can Sune come in? Dave, will I be able to hop on again? Because I'd rather the guest took the space. Poor guys, I don't know what we're doing. Yeah, Twitter is really good. And I find again the listeners are really engaging through it in a way that actually I've had real trouble with that in my own podcast. But my podcasts are about business, so a bit drier. Well, they're fun. But this Sune isn't loading. Okay, Sune, están intentando dejarte entrar, pero no podemos. Okay, let's go to another point then, Craig.
I wanted to ask you, Pilar, what have been the challenges from your point of view of starting and running a bilingual podcast?
Not knowing quite which audience to pitch it to. So it's really difficult to pitch it only to a bilingual audience because that's really reduced. And once we realized that it was actually the Spanish podcasters that were mostly listening, it's like, okay, how do we do this while still sticking to our original plan? So,
he preguntado a Pilar los dificultades en hacer un podcast bilingual. Y he comentado, Pilar, que es difícil haciendo en los dos idiomas a quién lo promocionas, a quién estás intentando llegar. Y lo que hemos dado cuenta es que estamos llegando a la audiencia Española. We seem to be reaching the Spanish audience, which makes sense because most of the podcast is in Spanish, and we are speaking to Spanish-speaking podcasters, although we do comment in English at the end. But most of our listeners have been and are Spanish.
But also we've been talking to Spanish podcasters, and as we all know, podcasters consume podcasts much more than normal people. So también el hecho de que son los podcasters a los que nos estamos dirigiendo también en la mayoría, por eso tenemos esa audiencia ahí, porque claro, los podcasters consumen muchos podcasts. Okay. So, Juan Carlos Giraldo, Spanish or Spanish speakers, which is different? Yeah, we started focusing on Spanish. Of course, I've got a mosquito here. We started focusing on Spanish podcasters, and at some point we will branch out to Spanish speakers. The original intention was also to find out, which we haven't really dug into, is how the environment, how the society affects what is being podcasted about, which we have discovered actually. So that was one of the main reasons why we were looking at Spain only in particular, is because I also especially wanted to find out how the environment and that society was affecting what was coming out in podcasting.
I think we're going to think about wrapping up. We only have about 2 minutes, and then I think at 10:02 we have to stop. Then Adela Mizrahi is coming on after. So there's a couple of things I wanted to wrap up with. First of all, I wanted to wish Victor Correal the best of luck. He's a Spanish podcaster who we've interviewed, who has a wonderful podcast called No es Asunto Vuestro, and he's launching his app today on Podcast Day for his project Guide Doc. So best of luck, Victor. I'm sure everything's going to go very well for you. And I just wanted to say hi.
Yeah, congratulations. Enhorabuena, Víctor Correal, que sale hoy, ¿cómo era? Guide Doc. Guide Doc TV, la aplicación que es como el Netflix de documentales. So yeah, check it out if you like documentaries, Guide Doc TV. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap up because next up is the Podcast Brunch Club. We're going to have Adela Mizrahi. I hope I pronounced that well.
Mizrahi.
This has been, good one. But, muchas gracias en el chat a todos. Muchísimas gracias. Lo siento que no hayamos podido meteros en el vídeo, pero muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for attending. It's been wonderful, very exciting, and the time just flew incredibly quickly. It's been a lot of fun. Hello, Steve.
Craig, how you doing? Good to see you again.
Yeah, same here. Man.
Good stuff. And and Steve and Dave, thank you very much for
absolutely. He
the
finally,
technical support.
He finally crashed and burned. He's been up all night, and he has to get a couple hours because in another hour and a half he needs to do an interview with a network. So it's pretty crazy here. But
wow,
what a great span we've had for all these hours now. I think. 15 hours now. So we're almost halfway through. We're getting there, but it's great to hear what's going on in the Spanish community within podcasting. And you really had some great resources and discussions. It's very difficult sometimes, depending on where you're at, to find that level of tools and interaction and how we do things. And I think that's one of the important things about Podcast Day is we learn from all countries. As I watch them, no matter what language they're in, you can learn from them. And I think that's one of the great things about what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. We've learned so much from the Spanish community, and we've got more points to talk about. It's just a shame we couldn't get them all in, the things we've been learning. And we've only done 8 episodes and 8 interviews, but the research for the interviews, the podcast that the Spanish podcast has been recommended to us to listen to, obviously it's opened up a whole new world for us. And the only problem I have personally is finding the time to listen to English podcasts and Spanish podcasts, because there just isn't enough time to do it all. But it's been wonderful so far.
Now, I only speak English and I have problems with it, so.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, good. Wow.
Every language has it.
All the very best.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And we've got another great episode coming up next. So we are going to take a short intermission, and we'll be back very soon with Podcast Day 2016. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you for tuning in, everybody.
Very much. Best of luck.
Bye-bye.